Hi, this is Dr. Y, and today I'm making this video after the tragedy and crisis of the Nashville school shooting. It broke my heart to wake up this week, as many of you did, check social media and find out that yet again there's another tragic loss at one of our elementary schools across the nation. Honestly, it really triggered me, and it took me a few days to decide if I really wanted to do this video or not. Just because when my family and I were living in New Mexico, we also experienced a school shooting. And it brought back a lot of those memories, things that I haven't thought about in a long time. We have 2 children, and one of those children was in middle school at the time. And there was a young man, a student there at that middle school, who went and got one of his dad's hunting rifles, brought it to school in the morning, entered the gym where all of the kids waited until the entry bell was rung for the day, and he started shooting into the gym. And I can remember being at work and getting a text. It was like a public school wide text that they sent out to all the parents to make them aware that there had been a school shooting. I pretty much went to my boss and said, I'm out of here. I'm going to get my kid. Ran, panicked to my car. There's parts of that day that I don't even remember. The school wasn't that far away from the public school that I was working in. I was working at the high school at the time as a social worker. And I remember getting into my car thinking the worst. There was very little information about what had happened. The police had been called. I'm listening to radio on my way over there trying to get information about it. And it was terrifying. When I pulled up to the school, the police had everything blocked off. Rightfully so, but they did. You could see kids coming out of the back doors. They were being ushered out the back, not the front, the other side of the school where the shooting had taken place. And there were kids coming out. There were parents parked all over the place. I just parked wherever I could park and stop my car and start running. I ran up to the school, and there was a police cross line barricade there where they weren't letting any parents through. And there were probably 200-300 of us standing there waiting to get information, not knowing about the status of our children. So I have an empathy for what's happening in Nashville. And I decided that I would do a video. Even though it's difficult to recall, I'm going to do a video today on how to help your kids after a school shooting and try to push out some references for you guys. And if you think this is helpful information to people, please pass this along. For a long time, I was under this false assumption that a school shooting could never happen in the school where my children go every single day. I realize that it can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. And so it started a whole litany of community meetings and protests and parental meetings where we're talking about, through the PTO, ways to increase security at our schools. It wasn't too long after that that my husband and I just decided it was better for us to move, because there really wasn't a whole lot of alternatives at that point in time to providing a safe and secure environment for our kids. I think about this and I wonder, not everybody has the opportunity or the resources to leave a particular community that is experiencing an increase in violence. Not everybody has the ability to just pick up and move whenever they need to or they want to. And so how does that happen? And what can we do to help our children through these experiences and help our community heal? But after a school shooting, we get to a point where we want to and we crave that place of safety that we had before. Even if we felt like that illusion of safety was something that maybe wasn't quite real, we still can long for and grieve that state of happiness or that state of peace that we had before. So for me, these are some of my suggestions as a mother, as a citizen, and as a doctor working in the mental health field on how you can help your child get through this. Number one, I think it's really important that we try to keep as many of our children's routines, those daily routines, as normal as possible to try and regain a sense of security. The number one thing that I felt and that my children felt, my husband felt after this school shooting was my world isn't safe. And so trying to come up with ways to focus on regaining and rebuilding a sense of security is going to be, I think, the number one thing that we have to work on. Number two, I think it's really important, at least for a little while, that we limit the access and the exposure of our children to social media, to TV, and to news. A lot of times the media can sensationalize events. And even in these situations, I'm not saying that they mean to do that. But when you're hearing from a child's point of view, all of these different factors related to an incident, and you're hearing them in frequency, like over and over and over again, it just doesn't give the child an opportunity to calm or de-escalate after an event. So limit the amount of exposure that your kids are getting to this particular event. They're already going to be talking about it. People are going to be talking about it. It's going to be everywhere, all over social media. But if you can, try to limit that exposure. It lessens the anxiety and the fear and reliving the event as much as possible. Number three, I think it's important that as parents and also social workers, administration, community workers, volunteers, that we are honest about what is going on. It doesn't do anybody any good, including our children, for us to make up excuses or to say things or explain things in a way that's not direct and honest. Now, I do think that we have to be age appropriate based on the maturity level and the cognitive level of our children. And that's really important too, to explain it in a way that they can understand, that doesn't cause more harm unintentionally. But I think being honest and upfront about it is the best way to be. The reality is they lived it. They already know. And so it's my job as a parent to try and recreate that safety with them. And when we don't fill in the blanks with truth about what's really going on, they fill in the blanks with their imagination. Number four, try to listen and validate the fears and concerns of your children. And do this in a way that doesn't minimize how they feel. So sometimes we might have the inclination to just say, oh, no, it's not that bad. That's not what really happened. Don't worry about that. Actually, when a person experiences a traumatic event, downplaying or minimizing the event makes the trauma worse. So what I want you to do is try to listen, actively listen, and then soothe those fears of your children by validating whatever it was that their experience is. When we validate other people's fears about a tragedy or a traumatic event that they have incurred, it allows them permission, internally and externally, to continue to process and heal from that event. When we push back against the perception that they're having about their experience, it just causes more trauma. Number five, one of the things that's really important for child development is that they have a sense of constancy, meaning the things that are still good about the world, the things that are still reassuring and safe about the world still exist. So in your way, reassure your kids that the world is still a good place. Yes, there are people who do very bad things in this world. There are bad behaviors that can traumatize and take people's lives. That's the truth. It's direct. We know that. But in the middle of all of that, there are still good people, and the world is still a good place. And we can focus on that in the middle of crisis. So reassuring your children that at some point, hopefully, they're going to come back into that feeling of feeling safe and also feeling like they can venture out into the world without being harmed. That is really, really important in a situation like this. Number 6, I think it's really important as an adult in this situation. So when this happened in New Mexico for my children at a middle school, as the adult in the home that was going to help my children through this process and help guide them back to a sense of safety and normalcy, one thing that was really important was for me to be assessing my own response to this crisis. I've seen children cope and be more resilient with tragedy than I have adults at times. As the adult in this situation, please be open to assessing your own response to this tragedy and seek the services that are important for you. Your healing, your safety, your growth is just as important. And if you aren't coping and dealing with the tragedy well, it will definitely transfer and trickle down to your kids. So make sure that your own self-care, your own professional help is part of your overall family plan. And then 7, I think it's really important that we rebuild and reaffirm our attachments. So one of the things that's critical for children to be able to develop in terms of maturation and cognition and their sense of trust and safety is that we have a strong attachment in our family to each other and to those relationships. What can happen in a traumatic event is children can begin to question the validity and the trust that they once felt, even with their parents and other significant others. And part of this is because the world that they thought was safe is now unsafe, and unsafe in a most horrific way, right? So that idea has now been shattered. And so one of the things that we can do as a family member for our children is to rebuild and reaffirm those attachments. Meaning, you know what? I'm your mom. I'm not going anywhere. I'm okay. You're okay. And we're going to get through this together. This concept really goes back to the idea of safety and the importance for children to feel safe. So if my children felt that they had me to rely on, their dad to rely on, grandparents to rely on, other community members to rely on, over time this would rebuild that attachment, which attachment equals trust. Attachment equals safety. So reaffirming that attachment, I'm still here for you, we are still a family, all of this is still intact. This is really important for surviving a shooting. Now, in addition to some of these tips that I've shared, I'm going to actually type out at the end of this video resources, websites, phone numbers, and places that you can tap into, especially for the state where you live. Every state has a victim compensation and assistance number and resources that are for free, organized by state. And many times, if you get on the directory, it's organized by city and sometimes county. So these are things that the average public doesn't even know is out there. When I went through this in my family, I had no idea that these resources were even there. And honestly, we didn't get any of this information from the school. The only thing that happened for this middle school was that they sent out general announcements through the media, and then they did bring the kids into the gym and talked with them on that level. Anything beyond that, in terms of counseling, social work, trauma, services, anything, I have no idea if they ever did any of those things. And I checked in with my kids to see if any of these services were being offered at the school. And to their knowledge, it didn't. This is disappointing to me because for people that go through a mass shooting tragedy, this upends and changes their entire lives. This was really shocking and disappointing to me. So I don't want you to feel like you don't have any resources to reach out to, even as parents who are trying to help their children through this event. So the American Counseling Association has disaster and mental health resources. I'm going to put that at the end of this video, the website for that. So the National Center for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder has a section on their website about the impact of school shootings on families. I look through this resource, it's fantastic, because if you're not a mental health provider working in this sector, in this specialty, how is the average American going to know what to even look for when or if you become, God forbid, a community that's plagued with a mass shooting? So this is a really important resource as well. I'll put that on there. The Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration for the United States of America has a section on their website associated with trauma, and it's called Coping with Mass Violence and Shootings. And I found a lot of their information. It's evidence-based, and it's very practical and easy to understand. So that's another resource that can help you. And then the Department of Crime and Victim Services for the United States of America has some very wonderful resources that are all free. They have webinars, they have seminars, they have other instructional videos. So as a parent, if I would have known this ahead of time when this happened to our family, I think it would have been great to be able to go in on my own time and research it and figure out what's true and what's not true. And what can I do about this? Where can I turn to? Because when you go through a situation like this, your whole world is upended. Now, there's two other hotlines that I want to point out that are really important. They're free, they're 24/7. One of them is the Disaster Distress Hotline. So it's funded by SAMHSA and it's 24/7, and the number is right here. The Disaster and Distress Hotline, you can call at any time. It's in addition to 911, but this is about specific disasters, tragedies, such as a mass shooting that's happening in the moment. What do I do? Where do I go? How do I get updates and information? And then if you are a victim in a mass shooting, there is confidential assistance to victims of these crimes, because they are crimes. The Victim Connect program is fantastic. It's 9 to 5 hours Eastern Standard Time. It's all free, and it comes through the Office for Victimization and Crime within America. The number is 855-484-2846. Basically 855-4VICTIM. And this is really important because sometimes we need immediate help. We need people to talk to immediately. It's one thing to go on a website, but it's quite another thing to talk to a trained professional in the moment. I sure hope that some of these resources and some things that I've shared will be helpful to you as we, a collective community, try to work through this horrible tragedy of mass shootings. In a very personal and real way, my heart goes out to the families in Nashville, as well as the other shootings that have happened across our dear nation. It makes me emotional thinking about it and reliving it and what happened in my own family. I want you to know that there are people across this nation, those of us that have experienced this as well as people who have not, but they have a great sense of love and empathy and compassion for what you're going through right now. If this information can be helpful to you or somebody that you know, please consider sharing it, sending it out, liking and subscribing to my channel. I'm putting out new videos every week.